Good morning. Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I'm Amir Goodman. I am thankful to all news resources and my team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Australian, African, and Asian channels, and of course news agencies AFP, AP, and Reuters. Now the headlines. Mr. Biden signed an executive order to control the immigration at US-Mexico border. In Indian election, Narendra Modi didn't get the landslide victory. Some American universities are returning to standardized testing process for admission. Wisconsin Attorney General filed 3 cases against Trump's aides. Justice Department accused Republican Hunter Biden trial started. Mr. Biden believes in Israeli Prime Minister. Tension at Lebanon border. 12 Palestinians died yesterday. Hot weather in US. On Wall Street, Nasdaq, Dow Jones Industrial and S&P 500 all gains. UK politicians debate. Slovenia recognized Palestinian states. Palestinian flag in French Assembly. French military instructors are target, Putin said. Djokovic out of French Open. Now the news in detail.
Good evening, I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the News Hour tonight, President Biden signs an executive order limiting the number of migrants who can seek asylum at the southern border.
Shocking election results in India, where Prime Minister Modi wins a 3rd term, but not in the landslide expected.
And why some universities are returning to standardized testing in their admissions processes.
When we go in and contextually evaluate that student, and we see that they're in the 99th percentile of their high school with that score, that's a very meaningful figure.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions, and friends of the NewsHour, including Kathy and Paul Anderson, and Camilla and George Smith.
Cunard is a proud supporter of public television. On a voyage with Cunard, the world awaits. A world of flavor, diverse destinations, and immersive experiences. A world of leisure and British style. All with Cunard's White Star service.
The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, fostering informed and engaged communities. More at kf.org.
And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the News Hour. President Biden signed an executive order today that temporarily blocks migrants from seeking asylum when border encounters reach a certain number.
The president used the announcement to set himself apart from his predecessor and political rival, former President Donald Trump.
Well, I will never demonize immigrants. I'll never refer to immigrants as poisoning the blood of a country. And further, I'll never separate children from their families at the border. I will not ban people from this country because of their religious beliefs. I will not use the U.S. military to go into neighborhoods all across the country to pull millions of people out of their homes and away from their families to put detention camps while awaiting deportation, as my predecessor says he will do if he occupies his office again.
Still, the move is one of the most restrictive President Biden has taken to date to crack down on the U.S.-Mexico border. Our White House In the day's other news, Wisconsin's Attorney General filed felony charges today against 3 Donald Trump allies who allegedly delivered fake elector paperwork claiming the former president had won the state in 2020. Those charged include attorneys Kenneth Chesborough and Jim Trupis and former Trump aide Mike Roman. All 3 are due in court in September. They face up to 6 years in prison and fines. Wisconsin is now the 5th state to bring charges over attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 election, joining Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. Attorney General Merrick Garland pushed back against Republican lawmakers today over what he called unprecedented attacks on the Justice Department. During an appearance before the House Judiciary Committee, Garland condemned what he called a conspiracy theory that his department played a part in Donald Trump's criminal hush money case in New York. And he denounced, quote, dangerous falsehoods about law enforcement, as Donald Trump and his allies have attacked the criminal justice system.
I will not be intimidated, and the Justice Department will not be intimidated. We will continue to do our jobs, free from political influence, and we will not back down from defending democracy.
Garland's appearance today comes as Republicans have moved to hold him in contempt. That's over the Biden administration's refusal to release audio of the president's interview with special counsel Robert Hur over his handling of classified documents. Garland has said that doing so could deter future witnesses from cooperating, and the DOJ says the audio could spur deepfakes and disinformation. Lawyers in the Hunter Biden criminal trial delivered their opening arguments today. Federal prosecutors tried to portray the president's son as a drug addict who intentionally lied on a form about his addiction when purchasing a gun back in 2018. Biden's attorneys say their client did not believe he was an addict when he filed the paperwork. Hunter Biden arrived at the Delaware court with his wife, and First Lady Jill Biden was also in court again today to show her support. Hunter Biden has pleaded not guilty. President Biden said today he does not think Israel's prime minister is playing politics with the war in Gaza. Instead, Mr. Biden said Benjamin Netanyahu is, in his words, trying to work out the serious problem he has. That follows comments the president made in the Time magazine interview published today that there is reason to believe that Netanyahu is prolonging the war for political gain. Meantime, Israel's army chief said today the IDF is nearing a decision on launching an offensive at its northern border with Lebanon, where it's been exchanging fire with Hezbollah. The State Department spokesperson said today that the potential for such action adds urgency to the ceasefire plan President Biden announced last week.
Good escalation of that conflict is something that we have been worried about and working to contain since October 7th. It is our assessment that the acceptance of a ceasefire by Hamas and the beginning of a calm would help us reach calm in northern Israel and southern Lebanon.
On the ground in central Gaza, Palestinians crowded around a police vehicle that was targeted in a series of overnight Israeli strikes. Gaza health officials reported that a family of 3 and 8 police officers were killed. A large portion of the southern and western U.S. is bracing for a blistering heat wave. Parts of California, Arizona, and Nevada could see temperatures top 110 degrees this week. Southern Texas will also see dangerous heat levels. In all, the National Weather Service says some 19 million Americans will be under excessive heat watches and warnings this week. Officials are urging those in affected areas to stay inside, drink plenty of water, and check on neighbors and relatives. Major League Baseball has permanently banned San Diego Padres infielder Tucupita Marcano for placing hundreds of sports bets totaling more than $150,000. That includes 25 bets on Pittsburgh Pirates games while he was on the team, though not playing himself. 4 other players were also suspended for betting violations, each receiving a 1-year ban. Meantime, the former interpreter for Los Angeles Dodgers star Shohei Ohtani pleaded guilty to bank and tax fraud today in a California federal court. Ipe Mizuhara admitted to stealing nearly $17 million from Ohtani to pay off sports gambling debts. There's been no evidence Ohtani was involved in any way. On Wall Street today, stocks eked out a gain after a report showed U.S. job openings fell more than expected in April. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 140 points to close at 38,711. The Nasdaq added 28 points. The S&P 500 tacked on nearly 8 points. And NASA is trying to get the Hubble telescope back online after a malfunction. The famous telescope slipped into a hibernating state more than a week ago due to a problem with one of its 3 remaining gyroscopes. Those spinning wheels help keep the telescope stable. NASA said today it'll operate with just 1 gyroscope, which will keep Hubble idle until mid-June. Hubble has been capturing the cosmos since it launched into orbit back in 1990. Its larger and more powerful successor, the Webb Space Telescope, went into space in 2021. Still to come on the NewsHour, a key FDA advisory committee rejects the use of the party drug ecstasy for treatment of PTSD. And an artist gives his brief but spectacular take on painting the people who feed America.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WE
NewsHour/brief.
And join us again back here tomorrow night when we travel to France to meet D-Day veterans as they prepare to mark the 80th anniversary of the Allied invasion of Normandy. And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Amna Navaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. For all of us here at the PBS NewsHour, thanks for...
On this Tuesday night from Juno Beach in France, Canadian veterans making a final journey.
I have friends here. Buried here. So I can't say goodbye.
Remembering the sacrifice and honoring those lost on D-Day 80 years ago. The future of refugees hoping for a new life in Europe.
Wonderful and insightful mission. It was a wonderful time for me. People were so happy to welcome us. I felt very much at home.
As European attitudes to immigration hardened.
Back here in Canada, demanding answers. The mounting mystery after a damning report revealed some MPs participated in foreign meddling. And the ethics questions about this federal cabinet minister's business dealings. The text messages obtained in a global news investigation and his response.
Global National with Donna Friesen, reporting tonight from Juno Beach in France.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We are on Juno Beach in northern France to mark a remarkable moment. The beaches all along here on June 6, 80 years ago were a battleground. It was the largest air, naval, and land operation in history. The goal was to win the Second World War. Fundraising is underway to expand it even further. I'll be back from Normandy a little later with a look at how immigration is driving the political agenda here in Europe, potentially threatening the freedom Canadians and others fought and died for here. But first, Farah Nasser has the rest of the day's news. Farah.
Thank you, Donna. We turn now to the political fallout following those damning findings detailed in yesterday's NSICOP report. The Liberals are refusing to say which federal politicians wittingly cooperated with foreign interference schemes that included revealing secrets to foreign states. Mercedes Stephenson has been digging into the explosive report. Mercedes, why isn't the federal government releasing their names?
Farah, a day after the bombshell allegations, we still don't know who the parliamentarians and whether or not we'll know their identities before Canadians go to the polls.
Mercedes Stephenson in Ottawa. Thank you, Mercedes. First, it was London Drugs, a major Western Canadian pharmacy and retail chain. Then, Ticketmaster. In recent weeks, Canadians have had their data compromised by cyber criminals. Tonight, a warning from Canada's Auditor General that 3 key federal agencies, including the RCMP, are falling short when it comes to protecting Canadians from these threats.
We found that these organizations have neither the capacity nor the tools to effectively fight cybercrime.
The Auditor General's review found staffing shortages, lack of coordination, and ignorance on how to properly deal with cyber threats. In one instance, Canada's communications regulator, the CRTC, learned about a child exploitation incident. Instead of forwarding the information on to law enforcement, the agency asked the individual to report the incident to police themselves. It's not known if that happened. And a big change tonight from Canada's telecom regulator. Online streaming services must now pay into a fund to help create Canadian content. The Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission is directing Netflix, Spotify and other streamers to put 5% of their annual Canadian revenue into the fund. It's expected to add about $200 million into the broadcast system every year to boost local, French language and Indigenous programs. So far, no comment from the streaming services. Canada's Ethics Commissioner says he is looking into the business dealings of Liberal Cabinet Minister Randy Boissonneau. The reverse course from Commissioner Conrad von Finkenstein follows Global News' reporting about the minister's ties to a lobbyist and medical supply company embroiled in lawsuits. Boissonneau says he's followed ethics and lobbying rules, but as Krista Hesse reports, new text messages obtained by Global News raises questions about the minister's potential involvement in a business deal a year after he was elected.
I have had no operational involvement in this company since I was elected.
Employment Minister Randy Boissonneau fielded questions from Ethics Committee members about his tie, but would not disclose the employee's full name. Global News was unable to verify any details related to a second employee named Randy. Farah?
Krista Hesse in Toronto. Thank you, Krista. A First Nation in northwestern Ontario is suing the provincial and federal governments over mercury poisoning. Grassy Narrows First Nation has been plagued with mercury poisoning since the 1960s. It alleges the governments allowed the river system to be contaminated by a paper mill upstream, then failed to clean up the toxic waste. And now a new study from Western University says the mercury contamination has been made worse by ongoing industrial pollution from the mill.
There's a new generation of young people that are being born every day, and they are, being born to
for the nearby river and Grassy Narrows territory, and for industrial land use in, on, or near the territory to be prohibited if it infringes on treaty rights. America's president uses his executive authority. Coming up, what Joe Biden will do if too many people try to illegally cross the U.S.-Mexico border. In the U.S., President Joe Biden announced sweeping new measures to temporarily close America's border with Mexico to migrants, which suspends protection for asylum seekers. The White House has been under intense pressure from Republicans and some Democrats to reduce the number of people crossing the southern border illegally. Jackson Prosco reports.
Facing a crisis of human migration at the southern border, but to take drastic action to slow the tide of humanity flowing north. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
The Israeli military has launched a ground offensive into central Gaza's Burej refugee camp and says troops are being backed by airstrikes. According to local hospital officials, one strike that hit the camp killed at least 11 Palestinians, including 3 children in Hamas positions. The incursion's happening as international mediators wait for Israel and Hamas to respond to a new ceasefire proposal. Modi's majority in doubt ahead how India's prime minister will likely need allies to secure another term. The scale of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's victory is nowhere near what he wanted. If Modi is to form government for a third term, he'll have to rely on coalition partners. Brendan Shannon reports.
Celebrating victory, but not the type he had hoped a second Indian leader to do so since independence. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Next, the percentage of Germans wanting their country to take a tougher line on immigration. You're looking at Juno Beach in Normandy, France. Global National is back in a moment.
80 years ago on these beaches in northern France, the fate of Europe was hanging in the balance. Canadian forces alongside our allies fought and died here to defeat the tyranny and racial hatred of the Nazis' barbarous regime. Now the far right is on the rise again. Nationalist parties have won elections in Italy, Hungary, the Netherlands, lead the polls in France, Austria, and Belgium, and have a stake in governments in Finland and Slovakia. And polls in Germany, where I was last week, show 1 in 5 people now support the far-right AfD party, and immigration is the big driver.
After I go to university.
Anas Modamani's extraordinary story is a tale of how Germany has changed and how this one selfie...
I know what it feels like.
He's a German citizen now with a good job, grateful for his new life, but well aware it would be much harder if he were arriving in Europe today. That is Global National for this Tuesday from Juno Beach in Normandy, France. People here have not forgotten what Canadian troops did for them. Even 80 years later, they pay tribute. These pipers are marching past Maison de Canadienne, the first house to be liberated by Canadian troops on Juno Beach. The significance, the sacrifice of helping bring peace to Western Europe is not lost on people here.
Je pense qu'on est très reconnaissant.
We are very grateful to Canadians, this man tells me, who came from far away to rid us of the Nazis. We thank them. I'm Donna Friesen. Thanks for watching. We will be back from Normandy tomorrow.
Tonight, President Biden signing a sweeping executive action on security at the U.S. southern border. Facing mounting criticism over immigration, the president making his most aggressive move yet to control the border. Mr. Biden saying he's doing, quote, what Republicans in Congress refuse to do. The power the new order gives him just weeks before his first debate with Donald Trump. Also tonight, opening statements in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial. The text messages the prosecution showed to the jury taken from his purported laptop, and what the defense is saying about his past drug use and purchase of a firearm. The nationwide disruptions impacting AT&T and Verizon customers. What's causing it? The first major heat wave of 2024, triple-digit temperatures in the West. We're tracking it. Attorney General Merrick Garland defiant on Capitol Hill, telling Republicans, I will not be intimidated, as they demand tapes of President Biden's interview with special counsel Robert Hur. Our NBC News exclusive, the new electric vehicles rolling off GM's assembly line. The CEO and why GM is still betting big on EVs despite a sales slowdown. And after he stole the show from his congressman dad, the 6-year-old telling us about his viral moment of fame.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. President Biden tonight.
This news is funded by viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. is urging the UN Security Council to adopt a resolution in support of the Gaza ceasefire and hostage deal outlined by President Biden. Israel and Hamas have not yet agreed to the deal. Israel continues to pummel the Gaza Strip, where the official death toll has exceeded 36,500, with over 82,000 people injured. Israel's killed at least 15,000 Palestinian children since October 7th. In Khan Yunis, relatives searched on Monday for loved ones after another Israeli airstrike.
I am shocked. I am looking.
Israeli forces. In other news from the region, Iranian media said Monday's Israeli airstrikes in Aleppo, Syria, killed a Revolutionary Guard general. Yemen's Houthi movement says its fighters targeted a military site in Israel's port city of Eilat as it vows to keep intensifying its attacks. Israeli military says it intercepted the ballistic missile. The Maldives says it's banning Israeli tourists over their government's, quote, genocidal acts, unquote, in Gaza. Meanwhile, a group of UN experts said Monday all nations, quote, must follow the example of 146 United Nations member states and recognize the state of Palestine, unquote. At the University of Toronto, students and faculty held a vigil Monday for the students in Gaza who've been deprived of a graduation due to the war. Graduation caps adorned empty chairs in tribute to Palestinian students who've been killed or have had their lives upended. University of Toronto students said they'll continue their encampment protest until their school divests from Israel.
UFT's investments serve the interests of the Israeli state. That is not neutrality. Palestinian students and their tuition money is going into these weapons manufacturing companies that are committing the murder of their family members and their friends. This is despicable, and we must stand up against it.
In San Francisco, police arrested 70 protesters who occupied the first floor of the Israeli consulate and refused to leave Monday. This is one of the activists.
Red line. The people are going to have to end this. People power has always been the change. Our government is not listening, and they are enabling this genocide. And so we have to be the disruptors and make it stop.
Here in New York, as Pride Month gets underway, hundreds of queer activists took to the streets and staged a die-in, calling for a ceasefire and an end to U.S. funding for Israel. Activists are demanding mainstream LGBTQ+ groups like Outright International speak out against the war. In Bonn, Germany, protesters interrupted a UN climate conference ahead of November's COP29, holding up a banner that read, "No business as usual during a genocide." As votes are still being tallied in India's election, early results show Prime Minister Narendra Modi is poised to win a third term. But his Hindu nationalist BJP appears to have lost significant support since the last elections in 2019, and the opposition Indian National Congress looks likely to double its parliamentary elections. We'll go to Delhi for the latest after headlines. In Sudan, the UN is again warning of the spiraling humanitarian disaster.
Time is running out for millions of people, including 3.6 million acutely malnourished children who are at risk of famine, and they're displaced from their lands, living under bombardments and cut off from humanitarian aid.
Fighting between the Sudanese army and the rapid support forces remains particularly intense in Khartoum and the Darfur city of El Fasher. At least 15,550 people have been killed, nearly 9 million displaced since the conflict broke out last year. In Nigeria, union leaders have launched another strike demanding salary increases for workers amidst the skyrocketing cost of living. The strike forced major airports and Nigeria's electricity grid to shut down Monday. Workers across Abuja and Lagos walked off the job while others blocked the entrances to the offices. This is a leader with Nigeria's Air Transport Union, Emmanuel Jaja.
Now we're inflicting hardship on Nigerians, which is not the normal thing. So if it is government that is thinking about their citizens, I think they should rethink, and we'll go back to the table.
President Biden is expected to sign an executive order that would temporarily shut down the U.S.-Mexico border and suspend protections for migrants seeking asylum. Under the new measure, U.S. officials would cap asylum requests at the southern border at no more than 2,500 per day. The border would be closed if asylum claims surpass that figure. The executive order is likely to face legal challenges and has been described as the most restrictive border policy issued by any recent Democratic president. Mexico's cooperation is key in enforcing the order, as migrants barred from the U.S. would be forced to wait across the border in Mexico. ProPublica has revealed Donald Trump's businesses and campaign committees have given significant financial benefits to at least 9 witnesses in the various criminal cases against the former president and what legal experts say could amount to witness tampering. ProPublica reports one campaign aide had his salary doubled. Another received a $2 million severance package, barring him from voluntarily cooperating with law enforcement. This comes as Donald Trump has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to annul his guilty verdict in New York. The Texas Supreme Court Friday rejected a challenge by 20 patients and 2 abortion providers who sued Texas after the state's abortion ban prevented them from receiving or administering urgent health care. The lawsuit sought to clarify and expand the medical exceptions that are supposedly permitted under the abortion ban. The Center for Reproductive Rights, which brought the case, said, quote, as women across the country are finding out, exceptions to abortion bans are illusory, and it's dangerous to be pregnant in any state that bans abortion, they said. Here in New York City, community organizers are condemning plans to build a new police training facility in Queens that'll cost some $225 million. New York City Mayor Eric Adams made the announcement on Friday. Construction for the training center is expected to begin in 2026 with plans for it to be operational in 2030. Critics have compared the so-called Public Safety Academy to Atlanta's widely contested Cop City, a massive $90 million police training complex being built in the Weelaunee Forest. And in Hong Kong, some activists are marking the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre despite a ban on protests and a heightened crackdown by authorities. On Monday, police arrested artist San Mu Chen as he engaged in a protest performance. In the middle of a busy street, Chen appeared to mimic pouring himself a drink and toasting, followed by drawing the numbers 8964 in the air with his fingers, the date of the massacre. One June 4th, 1989, the Chinese military attacked a student-led pro-democracy protest in Beijing, killing hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Tonight, President Biden unveils new border restrictions.
To protect America as a land that welcomes immigrants, we must first secure the border and secure it now.
What the new policy means for migrants coming into the United States illegally.
We've just crossed the border into Mexico to hear what this executive order means for people on this side of the border.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm James Brown in for Nora O'Donnell, and in just hours at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time, President Biden's aggressive new border restrictions take effect. The impact of this executive action will be immediate. Soon, U.S. immigration officials will be authorized to deport large numbers of migrants without processing their asylum claims. The restrictions will stay in effect until illegal crossings dip below 1,500 migrants a day, and they'll be triggered again if crossings. Lilia, Luciano, and Nancy Cordes, thank you so much. Jurors in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial got their first look at key evidence today. A photo of Hunter Biden shirtless, pictures of drugs, and the gun application document at the center of the case. CBS's Scott McFarland was inside the courtroom for the dramatic first day of testimony.
For Hunter Biden. JB?
Scott McFarland, thank you so much. Attorney General Merrick Garland pushed back today against what he calls dangerous attacks on the Justice Department. Garland appeared before the House Judiciary Committee amid threats from Republicans to hold him in contempt of Congress. Garland accused Republicans of spreading false conspiracy theories, suggesting the Justice Department was involved in former President Donald Trump's historic conviction last week by a New York jury.
These repeated attacks on the Justice Department are unprecedented, and they are
Tonight, several breaking stories as we come on the air. President Biden taking drastic action on the U.S.-Mexico border. How soon could much of the border be shut down? Also breaking, cell phone service disrupted for millions across this country tonight. Users affected in New York City, Chicago, Philadelphia, Dallas, Pittsburgh, and across multiple states. First tonight, President Biden's new executive action on immigration set to go into effect at midnight. The president's tight new restrictions limiting the number of asylum seekers, allowing him to temporarily close the border when the daily average goes above more than 2,500 in between legal ports of entry. Also developing tonight, those cell phone outages reported across the U.S. Millions of AT&T customers saying they cannot make calls to phones on other networks. Ariel Reshef with what we know so far. The life-threatening heat wave tonight. This early in the season, multiple states from California to Texas, triple-digit temperatures and a new round of severe storms possible, including tornadoes from Mississippi to Minnesota. Ginger Z has the forecast. In New York City, 2 young girls shot and wounded on a playground, just 9 and 11 years old. On Capitol Hill, the combative hearing, Attorney General Merrick Garland defending the Justice Department from allegations of political bias, reminding lawmakers they had no role in Donald Trump's conviction in New York. The first witness takes the stand in the Hunter Biden gun trial, the prosecution entering Hunter Biden's laptop as evidence, what the defense claimed today, Terry Moran in Delaware. The woman attacked by a bison at Yellowstone National Park, the bison lifting her off the ground. The couple magnet fishing in New York City.
Oh, it is! Stacks of bills, dude!
The amazing catch tonight, what they pulled out of the water. And America Strong tonight, the newborn and his first photo shoot, why his face is making everyone else smile.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, it's great to have you with us here on a very busy Tuesday night. We'll get to those cell phone outages, the disruption from millions.
Dave Rubin's the host of the Rubin Report. He joins us now. So when you take documents and you fan them out beautifully, and then you bring to the raid things that say top secret, slap them on top and take pictures and then leak them, is that tampering?
I think that is tampering. I am not a lawyer, but I believe that is tampering. I mean, the entire farce that we just witnessed for a few hours today was almost exactly like what we saw with Anthony Fauci testifying yesterday at Congress. These people never take responsibility for anything. The clip that really I thought was most interesting there was the Matt Gaetz one. Because all he's saying is, if you guys have emailed, if the Department of Justice has perhaps emailed Bragg's office, can we just see that? And even that, we can't even get an answer as it relates to that. You know, Jesse, I was watching the show in the green room, and I'm starting to see a theme here.
What's that?
That if you're a Democrat, you can basically get away with everything. And if you're a Republican, you can't get away with anything.
I was a Democrat when I was a teenager. Yeah. Like, look where that got me. But so if he's asking you, could we see correspondence? If you corresponded, why don't you say, sure, ask my team, we'll get it to you. Why does he have to act so guilty and weasel around the answer for 5 minutes? It's because he is guilty. They probably have been coordinated.
Yes, that's exactly right.
You think we're ever going to see any of these documents, or is it going to be in 2040?
I think it will be closer to 2040 than 2024, let's say. I think this is what the Democrat machine, the deep state, they've done unbelievably well. They put a bunch of people in positions of power who never, the buck stops with nobody. Oh, refer to that office. Oh, call this guy. And it's this constant shell game. And then you have a couple decent Republicans. Thomas Massie also asked some great questions during that hearing. Jim Jordan, obviously. And it's like you hear them, and they're trying. They really are trying. And we are watching our democracy just dissolve right in front of us.
Right. And then you get the Democrats who just waste time and say, aren't you lovely? You smell beautiful. What cologne are you wearing?
People are mean to you. They send you mean emails. Are you all right?
Imagine having Fauci, who oversaw the biggest pandemic in 100 years, and you just compliment him on how well his suit fits. And that's what you're using your 5 minutes for? What about these her tapes? So this is where Biden couldn't remember what day it was. Remember, they said he was a well-meaning, elderly, doddering old man. They released the transcripts, but not the tapes. Are you suspicious they may have doctored the transcripts? Because they doctor White House transcripts.
I think there's every reason to believe they doctored the transcripts. He is a rambling old buffoon. I would take out well-meaning, and then you sort of have it. He's old and doddering. I think we can all agree on that. The well-meaning part, I do not know.
All right, not very well-meaning. Dave Rubin, very well-meaning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The Rubin Report. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hot...
Tonight, an astonishing allegation. Canadian politicians accepting perks to share privileged information. The revealing report about officials willingly working with foreign states.
There has been big problems in terms of transmission of information.
the quiet job action that could delay your travel plans.
It's just too important to the government to keep the borders open.
Plus, flight fares on the way up.
Airline tickets will take a skyrocketing jump.
And can your eyes help diagnose dementia using artificial intelligence to detect Alzheimer's?
There's no pain, no harm to the patient.
And from the gallery to the greens.
My heart started pumping pretty good, but I was excited about it.
A lucky fan swings into action at the Canadian Open.
Just kept getting high five.
CTV National News with Omar Sanchedino. Reporting tonight, Morella Fernandez.
Good evening. We begin with a stunning allegation of unethical and possibly illegal behavior by some members of parliament and
has issued several warnings.
Stories from your neighbourhood, around the country and from overseas.
There's a frantic search for survivors still underway.
For sport, weather, lifestyle and more. Download the ABC News app and get alerts on your phone. Visit the ABC News website and for stories straight to your inbox, subscribe to one of our newsletters. All the latest, all verified, all the time. Stay in the know with ABC News.
Today, warnings of stagnant economic growth, with the Reserve Bank Governor not ruling anything in or out to keep inflation under control. Also ahead, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi wins a third consecutive term, but his party falls short of expectations. The US President announces new measures to deter migrants from crossing the border from Mexico. And state pride on the line, New South Wales and Queensland to battle it out tonight in Sydney. Hello and welcome to Mornings on ABC News. I'm Gemma Vaness. Let's have a look at the weather in the capital cities. It is a mostly sunny day in Brisbane today. This rain is increasing for Sydney and Canberra. Cloudy day in Melbourne and partly cloudy for Hobart and Adelaide. Perth becoming sunny and sunny in Darwin, heading for a top of 32 degrees. The Reserve Bank Governor has told Senate estimates Australia's economic growth is expected to stay low. Michelle Bullock is taking questions from parliamentarians this morning. Political reporter Evelyn Manfield has been following it from Parliament House and joins us now. Evelyn, what are we hearing so far?
Lots to unpack from the Senate hearing with the Reserve Bank Governor, Michelle Bullock. I'll talk about inflation in just a moment, but we are due to get within this half hour figures on the national accounts. They'll come out at about accounts figures that we'll have at 11:30, Gemma.
Evelyn Manfield at Parliament House, thank you. The Disability Advocacy Network Australia says there's been a significant lack of regulatory control of the $42 billion National Disability Insurance Scheme. The federal parliament has heard criminals have manipulated participants to buy drugs, holidays and new cars, with at least 5% of the scheme spending thought to be going to people not in genuine need. In some cases, the agency has had to move participants to different locations to escape harassment from criminals. Federal Health Minister Mark Butler says the scheme needs to be cleaned up.
All Australian taxpayers are contributing to this really important scheme. If you remember what it was like for people living with disability before the NDIS was introduced, social program be put back on track.
India's Prime Minister has claimed victory in the country's election, but the performance of his party, the BJP, has fallen well short of expectations. The ABC South Asia correspondent Meghna Bali is in New Delhi.
I am outside the BJP's headquarters in the heart of Delhi, where the atmosphere is absolutely electric.
And you can tune in for our documentary Invincible Modi at 10 o'clock tonight on the ABC News channel, or you can catch it anytime on our website. And you can also get more from Avani by searching for Looking for Modi on the ABC website. The search for a missing toddler near Geelong. Dias, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
And you can tune in for our documentary Invincible Modi at 10 o'clock tonight on the ABC News channel, or you can catch it anytime on our website. And you can also get more from Avani by searching for Looking for Modi on the ABC website. The search for a missing toddler near Geelong has ended in tragedy, with the boy found unconscious in a nearby dam. The toddler was reported missing from an address in Lara just before 5:30 yesterday afternoon. The police air wing helped search the area. The boy was found unconscious in a dam off Windermere Road. Police performed CPR until paramedics arrived, but the boy could not be revived. South Australia's Aboriginal Children's Commissioner has been looking into the removal of First Nations children after the ABC shone a spotlight on the issue. Reporter Bethany Alderson has the details.
Well, the Commissioner, April Laurie, has spent the past 2 years investigating the removal and placement of Aboriginal children in out-of-home care as part of an ongoing inquiry. She's previously told the ABC that she's heard from a number of mothers that the Department for Child Protection is returning back into state care at rates similar to those of the stolen generation. So we'll be waiting to see what more comes out of this investigation later today.
And if this report has raised any issues for Torres Strait Islander or Aboriginal viewers, you can contact 13yarn on 139276 or visit their website 13yarn.org.au. There are major disruptions to public transport in Melbourne today after a leak at a railway station in Melbourne CBD. Alexander Darling reports.
It's currently raining a little bit in Melbourne CBD, and it's about this much water that it took to shut down one of the main train stations in the City Loop this morning. A leak in the roof of Melbourne Central Station was detected at about 5 a.m, and authorities closed this point, but fortunately it appears not to have affected people's commutes too much.
US President Joe Biden has unveiled his most restrictive immigration policy yet, aimed at deterring migrants from crossing the border from Mexico. North America correspondent Carrington Clark has more.
Now, this is a major change in direction for the president, who came to power after criticising the hard line that his predecessor Donald Trump had taken. And this policy looks a lot like the policies that we saw in place under the Trump administration. Now, effectively, what this executive...
protection at the southern border, and it should devote more resources, including personnel with trauma-informed training at the border.
Back home now, and it is one of the biggest rivalries in Australian sport. Queensland will take on New South Wales in the first game of the men's State of Origin series tonight. Reporter Jessica Rendell is in Sydney, where fans are counting down to kick off.
Well, we're expecting an action-packed night tonight, and there are a few different factors that could make for quite a spicy game on the field. Now, on the one hand, Queensland are coming onto this off the back of a two-year winning streak. So the big question is, will they be able to keep that up, or will the Blues dash those hopes and dreams for them? In terms of Harry Evans and Jake Trbojevic will have to put their Manly alliances aside as they try and take their teams to victory tonight.
A new report by the US climate scientists have revealed the staggering number of extremely hot days that countries around the world have sweltered through due to climate change. This comes as the world hits a climate milestone, with May marking the 12th month in a row of record-breaking global heat. National weather reporter Tyne Logan explains.
The average global temperature is a really important figure, but it's also one that can be tricky to understand in terms of things without climate change. Still, that's a doubling of extreme heat days.
Australian radio and television star John Blackman has died aged 76. Blackman became a household name as part of the lineup on the television show Hey Hey It's Saturday, famously voicing the character Dickie Nee and providing voice-over commentary. He was a well-known radio presenter and had roles on Blankety Blanks and the Paul Hogan and Daryl Summer shows. Fellow radio host Darren Hinch has paid tribute to Blackman, describing him as the fastest ad-lib man ever. Here are the top stories on ABC News. Reserve Bank Governor Michelle Bullock says figures being released today will show the nation's economic growth rate is low. In the last quarter, gross domestic product rose just 0.2%, while over the year, GDP is running at 1.5%. Bullock says the March quarter figures coming out today will reflect weak household consumption. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has claimed victory in the country's general election. The performance of Modi's party, the BJP, fell well short of expectations though, losing its majority for the first time in a decade. Mr Modi is expected to lead a coalition government with final...
is around $21 trillion, but of course it will be up to the federal court to determine the final amount if it does see in the favour of the Information Commissioner.
Alicia, thank you. The jury impanelled for the trial of Joe Biden's son has heard its opening arguments. Hunter Biden is accused of lying about using drugs when he bought a gun, with the trial playing out just months from November's presidential election. North America correspondent Barbara Miller has more from Wilmington in Delaware.
There were some pretty surreal moments on day 2 of Hunter Biden's trial as the jury heard these very long excerpts from the audio version of his 2021 memoir, Beautiful Things. One excerpt alone lasted...
Rather than bullets, and they could chastise the leader, will gain the respect of the world.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the coming weeks will define the war over the warmer months, and he's praised his forces for their work in stabilising the Kharkiv region. There have been intense battles stretching from the Russian border to Ukraine's second largest city. Breaking news now, Australia's e-safety commissioner will drop court action against Elon Musk's X Corp over the publication of graphic footage of a stabbing in a Sydney church. Now, in any case, X had previously ignored orders from the commissioner to remove vision of the stabbing from its platforms. The commissioner had suffered a series of legal blows and a temporary order to remove the vision had expired. And this federal court case had been seen as a test of the Australian authorities' ability to seek the removal of content on a global scale. So more to come on that this afternoon. Now it's time for sport. Here's Charles Bryce.
Defending champion Novak Djokovic, he's pulled out of the French Open for his quarterfinal. That was due to a knee injury.
Well, in 14, Adelaide, the same conditions, but getting up to 18 degrees. And this is a little bit of a difference. Perth, you'll actually got some rain and a possible storm and a top of 23, while Darwin will be sunny and 31.
Thanks, Steph. And stay with us. Treasurer Jim Chalmers will hold a press conference shortly, reacting to today's GDP figures showing weak economic growth. Stay with us.
Meeting the French who are so French. Watch French Connections, presented by Florence Filmineau on France 24 and France24.com.
US President Joe Biden issues new executive actions aimed at cracking down on migration, trying to neutralize a major point of attack from the Republicans heading towards the election. This led to complaints by activist groups as well as some within his own Democratic Party.
Conservative and Labour leaders in the United Kingdom clash in their first live TV debate ahead of the snap election. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak having it all to do as his party trails in the polls. Meanwhile, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi claims victory in the general election, allowing him to push ahead with his agenda, even though his party loses seats to a stronger than expected opposition. Those of you just joining us, welcome to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Alexander Orcott. Now, in the build-up to the presidential election in the United States, Joe Biden is trying to get a grip on illegal immigration, which has soared during his term in office, making it a key point of attack for his Republican rivals. He's issued new executive orders aimed at severely curbing who's eligible to apply for asylum.
US President Joe Biden has said he is trying, if they pass, they can pursue limited forms of humanitarian protection. The United Nations immediately expressed concern.
In all situations, we reiterate that seeking asylum is a fundamental human right, and access to asylum for those in need is paramount. And any person who claims to have a well-founded fear of being persecuted in their country of origin should have access to safe territory and have this claim assessed before being subject to deportation or removal.
In his announcement, Biden accused Republicans of trying to undermine recent bipartisan legislation, which he felt would have better addressed the issue, saying near politics that they say don't go far enough.
We move on now for a look at the latest from the war in Gaza, where Israeli bombardments have killed at least 19 people in central and southern parts of the enclave. Palestinian medics said 17 deaths were caused by separate airstrikes on 2 refugee camps, while another 2 were policemen who were helping to guard deliveries of aid to Rafah. The Israeli military said its jets have been hitting only Hamas militant targets in central Gaza, while ground forces were operating in a focused manner in the Al Barej area. The war has strained relations between Israel and its main ally, the United States, with the Biden administration pushing for a ceasefire deal and for ongoing aid deliveries, while Netanyahu's government remains determined to continue pushing on with its military operations until Hamas is fully destroyed. France 24's correspondent in Washington earlier spoke with the US National Security Council spokesman John Kirby outside the White House.
We are comfortable that we have been able to, through direct and forthright conversations with our Israeli counterparts, at every turn, no more civilian casualties. We want to see all the hostages released.
After recent moves by Spain, Norway and Ireland, Slovenia has become the latest European nation to recognise a Palestinian state. Its parliament overwhelmingly voted in favour of the government-supported motion following a chaotic 6-hour session where the opposition tried to derail it. A Palestinian flag was raised in front of the chamber after the vote, as Prime Minister Robert Golob wrote on X that the recognition sends hope to Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. Left-wing lawmakers in the French National Assembly are also pushing for a Palestinian state to be recognised. They earlier organised a colourful show of support during Tuesday's session.
I see everyone's clothes. I believe it is necessary to remember that we are in the National Assembly.
The colours of the Palestinian flag in the French Parliament. The Israel-Palestine conflict was once again brought to the forefront at a tense National Assembly on Tuesday, weeks, and has had his parliamentary allowance cut in half for the next 2 months.
Now, French military instructors training soldiers in Ukraine would be a legitimate target for Russian strikes. So says Moscow's top diplomat as he visited Africa recently. France does not officially have any military personnel assisting or training forces in Ukraine, but Kyiv said last week it is in talks with Paris on the issue.
The pronouncement came during the Russian foreign minister's visit to Congo. His latest of several to the African continent has also on several occasions raised the possibility of sending Western troops to Kyiv. A move that has proved controversial among his allies and has angered Russia.
The British general election is exactly a month away, and a YouGov poll shows British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak fared slightly better than Sir Keir Starmer as they went head-to-head in their first live debate ahead of the snap election. With this analysis, here's Caroline Loyer.
Please let Mr. Sunak finish. In a heated debate, the two contenders clashed perhaps on July the 4th. The leader of the party that can command a majority will become Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, over the past 6 weeks, India has embarked on the world's largest democratic exercise in 7 phases. It works out as 1 in every 8 people in the world has been eligible to vote. And after all that, the official results are in from the Election Commission. The BJP of Prime Minister Narendra Modi won the most seats, though for the first time since sweeping to power a decade ago, fell short of an absolute majority, meaning it'll have to depend on coalition partners. Despite the setback, Modi is putting on a brave face and pledging to forge ahead with his programme.
India's general elections were meant to be a slam dunk for Prime Minister Narendra. Modi now finds himself in uncharted territory. With more dependence on a coalition, he may need to shift towards a welfare-oriented approach.
Finally, Novak Djokovic's hopes of defending the French Open title have ended by injury. The 37-year-old Serbian tennis player withdrew ahead of his quarter-final match against Casper Ruud after a scan on his right knee showed the severity of that injury. 24-time Grand Slam winner blaming it on the slippery Roland Garros surface. His withdrawal means that Yannick Sinner is now set to take the top spot on Monday, making him the first Italian world number 1. With that, we end this edition. Stay tuned to France 24.
Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, high-stakes in-house talks continue for South Africa's ANC party after last week's bruising election slip. The country's on tenterhooks as they wait for signs of which of the ANC's rivals it will be likely to reach out to form a coalition. Also, dozens of African heads of state head to Seoul for a summit aimed at deepening ties between the continent and South Korea. The meeting already led to promises from the Asian nation to up its development contribution and investments in Africa by billions. And since a fragile 2022 peace deal ended Ethiopia's 2-year war between Tigrayan fighters and federal forces, the northern region continues to wrestle with humanitarian crises sparked by the conflict. There are also flickers of recovery. But first, we start with the dramatic relationship counselling that's got to be going on behind closed doors for South Africa's main political players at the moment, as the ruling ANC has some pretty tough talks about who of their rivals they'll be approaching to.
This is Asia Now.
Hello, it is 11 a.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 8:30 in New Delhi, and 10 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Yasmin Yonkers. At this hour, down but not out. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi looks set to clinch a third term in power, but not without relying on his allies. A resurgent Congress-led India alliance gains ground in key states in a dramatic turn of events. Top political leaders will head into a huddle today as both sides work on their next steps forward. Both the BJP and the Congress will reach out to crucial allies to stake claim to power in the absence of a clear majority at the polls. And US President Joe Biden imposes a sweeping new executive action that curbs migrant arrivals at the US-Mexico border. He says it's to gain control of the area as immigration emerges as one of the top voter concerns in the upcoming presidential race. And the people of India have given their verdict. Official results of parliamentary elections show that the alliance led by Prime Minister Modi has won enough seats to form the next government. But it's been a much tougher fight compared to the last two polls. And for the first time in a decade, Mr. Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party failed to win a majority on its own, stopping at 240. That's below the magic mark of 272. Last time, the BJP alone won 303 seats. That's 303. So the opposition Congress nearly doubled its tally this time from 2019, winning 99 seats this time. Arnold Gay has more on the figures.
In terms of vote share, the BJP share dropped marginally from last time to 36.6%.
Have ambitions of forming the new government in India. Appreciate that so much. Priyatha Rajabasi out of New Delhi and Rebecca Bundan from Bengaluru. Ladies, thank you. Your Asia Business Update is next, including China's services activity accelerated at the fastest pace in 10 months for April, according to a private sector PMI index. Also, Australia's economic growth slows in the first quarter of this year, raising pressure on the central bank to cut rates.
South Korea will expand development aid to Africa and pursue deeper cooperation with the continent, its president said Tuesday on the first day of the inaugural Korea-Africa Summit. Representatives from 48 African countries are attending the two-day summit, where talks are expected to focus on trade and investment. In order to respond to climate change, participating leaders and members have agreed to form a climate finance structure that reflects Africa's need to respond to the threat. Also, South Korea has decided to expand projects such as K-Rice Belt that can help strengthen Africa's food self-sufficiency. Mauritania's president said Africa was seeking a durable partnership. To conclude, I am convinced that our summit launched the basis of an innovative, win-win and durable partnership based on solidarity and trust in our collective intelligence. Africa's trade with South Korea remains small compared to other Asian countries such as China and Japan. Seoul is also seeking Africa's support against Pyongyang, which maintains ties with several African countries. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov landed in Congo Monday night to embark on the second leg of his Africa tour. He was greeted at the airport by Congolese officials and later met with Congolese Foreign Affairs Minister Jean-Claude Gakoso. Lavrov was due to meet with President Denis Sassou Nguesso in the city of Oyo on Tuesday, according to a communique from Brazzaville. Before flying to Congo, Lavrov was in Guinea, where he met with Foreign Minister Morisanda Kuyate on Monday. He said his focus was on strengthening mutual relations and cooperation on the international stage. I hope to discuss everything in detail, and also to discuss our relations and coordination of our actions on the international stage, first of all at the UN regarding Russian-African relations. Lavrov has visited the African continent several times since 2022, as Moscow seeks Africa's support in the wake of Ukraine.
As exhumations continued on Monday in a Kenyan forest where hundreds of victims of a doomsday cult were found buried last year, 7 more bodies were found. The total number of people unearthed from the mass graves now stands at 436. The government paused the exhumations last year to allow for DNA matching of the bodies. So far, only 34 of the victims have been identified. The first bodies were discovered in April 2023 in the Shakahola forest near the Kenyan coast, leading to the arrest of Pastor Paul Mackenzie, who was alleged to have led his followers to starve themselves to death in order to meet Jesus. Mackenzie has pleaded not guilty to 191 counts of murder, manslaughter, and terrorism. He has also been charged with child torture and cruelty. The case shocked Kenya, a largely Christian nation, and brought attention to the lack of regulation of churches and cults.
Gary Coney was officially sworn in Monday as Haiti's new Prime Minister. A short ceremony was held at the Prime Minister's office in the capital, Port-au-Prince. Coney took over from interim PM Patrick Boisvert. The 58-year-old, who shares executive power with the Presidential Council, has called political factions to set aside their differences. What will be of interest for the people of Haiti is that, through this mandate, we will see the interests of different groups of individuals put aside for the best interest of the nation. Coney briefly served as Haiti's Prime Minister from 2011 to 2012. He now faces a monumental task, including reforming institutions, organizing elections, and fighting gang delinquency. The Caribbean nation is still waiting on the Kenya-led international police force.
The deal ends speculation over the French star's future. It also means a double win for Real Madrid, who are still celebrating their Champions League triumph over the weekend. Earlier on Monday, President Emmanuel Macron paid a visit to the national team at their training camp outside Paris. The squad departs for the Euros in Germany soon. With Real Madrid, Mbappe joins Brazilian forward Vinicius Jr. and English midfielder Jude Bellingham to form an attacking trio seen as one of the greatest in club football.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.